Good evening, folks. I am not sure if I am going to be able to finish tonight's lesson. I have 20 slides to go through, and I may have to break it up because there's just so much information. We're going to talk about Revelation 12 and 13. Now, even though the seventh trumpet was blown in chapter 11, verse 15, the details of what come out of the seventh trumpet are not revealed until chapter 16. Chapters 12 and 15 view prophecies of the end times from another perspective, as well as introduce great persons. Great, I don't mean as in good in all of them, but great as in the idea of power and preeminence. And these individuals are greatly involved in the second half of the tribulation. Now, these 7 key figures, you find a woman clothed with the sun and the moon and a rainbow about her. There is a dragon, number 2, with 7 heads and 10 horns. And this is Satan, and also later on the beast. There is the male child, Christ. The 4th is Michael the Archangel. 5, the offspring of the woman, saved Israel, as well as individuals who come to know Christ during the tribulation. The Antichrist, who is also known as the beast that comes out of the sea, and then the false prophet, the beast out of the earth. Now, the narrative of Revelation is not advanced in chapters 12 through 15, and what I mean is the time frame is not advanced. What is presented are events that are happening at the sounding of the 7 trumpets, because we don't even get into the bowl judgments yet. These things are they're happening at the same time. The chronology is what I'm trying to say of Revelation resumes in chapter 16. This is kind of a pause in one respect, just to let you see what is going on from different perspectives. So the first personage, a woman. Israel is personified as a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, with a crown of 12 stars on her head. She's called the Great Sign. This is a first in a series of events called signs or miracles. And we've just gone through Israel, 12:1, the red dragon, 12:3, 13 and 14, the false prophet who performs miracles, signs, 15:1, the seven angels with the seven last plagues, chapter 16, the three unclean spirits who are like frogs that come out to deceive and call on kings of the world to war against God Almighty. And the sixth great sign is the ultimate seizing of the beast in chapter 19, verse 20, and the false prophet who are thrown into the lake of fire alive. Now the woman, Israel, symbolized by the sun and the moon. In Genesis 37, verses 9 through 11, we have Jacob and Rachel referenced as the sun and moon, and the stars in the crown are the 12 sons or the tribes of Jacob. And this was done in a dream by Joseph. Mary is not the source of Christ. The nation Israel is seen here as being pregnant, fulfilling the Abrahamic covenant. And I can't stress enough that Israel and the church are separate. Though the people of God are one, this doesn't wipe out the distinctions that are made between Israel and the church. And you have to go back and look at Romans 9 through 11 to speak of Israel being set aside for a time. But God is not done with Israel. We're living in what are called the times of the Gentiles, and an aspect of Revelation is where God is picking back up Israel and dealing with her. A second sign appears in heaven. Revelation 12, 3 and 4. A red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. This is Satan identified in verse 9 of chapter 12, who gives his power to the beast, and both are described as having 7 heads and 10 horns. And we'll get into this a little later. But the 7 heads represent world empires, and the beast is the 8th world empire. Some of this is seen in Daniel chapter number 7, 7 and 8, and 24. And we will look very much, if I can get to it tonight, in Revelation 17, verses 8 through 13. Now, what the dragon does is he swept 1/3 of the angels from heaven to earth. And the dragon attempts to kill the child of the woman. Satan is well aware of the Abrahamic covenant, and he is going to do everything that he can to subvert God into being able to fulfill the Abrahamic covenant. And don't fall into the trap of thinking that this is just Herod who sought to kill the infant Jesus, or even Pontius Pilate. Satan has been at work to corrupt and destroy the lineage of Abraham from the start. Hagar. Remember who Hagar is, the Egyptian woman who was given to him by Pharaoh after Abram and Sarah are kicked out of Egypt because Abraham lied about the fact that Sarah was not just his half-sister, but his wife. When he said, "She's my sister," he was afraid for his life. Then later on, during the wilderness wanderings, Balaam, who sought to tempt Israel with intermarrying with the nations, which God forbade. You have Solomon and his wives and the idolatry, that he fell into, because there was a time in Solomon's life he was putting up idols of the gods of his wives in and around the temple. And he also built temples for his wives. The idolatry that took place during the divided kingdom, during the captivity where Nebuchadnezzar sought to erase the heritage and language of the people of Israel. He renamed Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah to Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There was a corrupt priesthood during Malachi's day. These are just a few examples. Others include Judas, Peter, the Pharisees, and Satan himself tempted Jesus. Satan has been at work for a very long time, doing whatever he can to try to hinder God from being able to fulfill his promise to Abraham. And it's not going to work. The third personage or sign here is Jesus, the male child. The woman here again is not Mary, but the nation of Israel giving birth to Messiah. And this child is to rule all the nations, it says, with a rod of iron. And after the birth, the child is caught up to God and his throne. This can be viewed as Christ's ascension. The same word is used, caught up, that Paul uses in 1 Thessalonians 4. But it's not referring to rapture in regard to Jesus. Jesus doesn't need any deliverance from Satan. And the real deliverance in this context is Israel being delivered from Satan for 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years. And Jesus referred to this in Matthew 24:16 and in Mark 13:14, where he talks about at the abomination of the desolation. This is where the Antichrist claims to be God at the midpoint of the tribulation, that Israel, they flee into the wilderness. And here in this passage of Revelation, you find that the dragon is chasing the woman, and God gives the nation, it says, wings like the eagle to flee, and the dragon spews water out of its mouth. The earth helps the woman by taking the water that the dragon spews out. And then the dragon gets so infuriated that he goes after the other individuals who worship Christ, the saints who are alive at this time, individuals who have not taken the mark of the beast, individuals who are worshiping Jesus Christ, and he is seeking to persecute them. The next sign is the angel Michael and the war that takes place in heaven. And I believe this coincides with the abomination of desolation, which is the midpoint of the tribulation. This is where the Antichrist goes into a newly constructed temple and sits on what is called the mercy seat, that is the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, and claims himself to be God. And what happens in heaven is that it says there is war and hate in heaven. Satan and his angels seek to defeat God and God's angels. And Michael and the angels are listed here, Michael specifically, and other angels, and Satan is cast out of heaven and thrown down to earth. And that's where I see, not just the abomination of desolation, but what we just talked about. Satan is then going after Israel, the woman, and trying to persecute Israel. Because I think this causes Satan to attack the woman and her offspring. Those who hold to the commandments of God is what Scripture says, and to the testimony of Jesus, meaning Israel and others who are saved during the tribulation, or which is now becomes the Great Tribulation. Now we come into Revelation 13, the beast from the sea. Now I believe chapter 13, 1 through 3, from a chronological perspective, is at the beginning of the tribulation. The beast from the sea comes out, because remember, you have to go back and read in Daniel that this individual makes a covenant with Israel, a 7-year covenant, which he then breaks at the middle part of the covenant. So I believe from verse 4 and on, we're dealing with events from the second half of the tribulation of chapter 13. This Antichrist, he comes in somewhat peaceful. I mean, he comes in at the beginning of the tribulation as a peaceful character, somebody that brings people together. And what have we been dealing with for so long, folks? If it's not to try to bring peace between Israel and the Arabs. And I believe that is what this individual winds up doing. And this peace lasts for 3.5 years. Now, from verse 4 and on, I think you're dealing with what is happening from the Great Tribulation. The beast is introduced as having 10 horns and 7 heads, and 10 diadems and blasphemous names are on his head. The beast is said to be like a leopard, feet like a bear, mouth like a lion. And Satan gives this beast his throne and his authority. Now, again, we have to take a little reverse, run back to Daniel. When Daniel is in Babylon, he is given visions of an animal that is like a leopard, which wound up becoming Greece. They were an empire that was very fast. The bear was the Medo-Persian Empire, and the lion was the Babylonian Empire at that time. So this beast represents images, ideas of these previous world empires. The beast is going to come in fast. He is going to be very powerful, like a bear. And his mouth, the jaws of a lion, he's going to just kind of rip apart those who don't fall in line. Now in verse 3, I believe that there is a misinterpretation to mean that there is an assassination attempt on the beast. I know it talks about a mortal head wound, but we need to go forward for a minute. And I want to talk for a moment about Revelation chapter 17, verses 8 through 13. John has just saw a woman who is called a harlot riding a beast. And John is marveling at what he sees. And an angel says to him, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery. The beast that you saw," I want you to pay very, very specific attention to the words that are read. "The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast, that he was, is not, and will come. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits." And I have to stop right there at the timeout, because so many people just stop there and say, "Oh, the beast is Rome. Rome is, or it's the Catholic Church, because Rome is sitting on the city on the 7 hills, or the beast is a reconstitution of the Roman Empire." No, you can't stop right there. Look at verse 10. "And they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. When he comes, he must remain a little while. And the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. And they have one purpose. They give their power and authority to the beast." Now, I want to stop for just a second. The Ottoman Empire was named for Osman I, who lived from 1259 to 1326. He was a Turkish Muslim prince in Bithynia who conquered neighboring regions once held by the Seljuk dynasty, and founded his own ruling around 1299, 1300. Ottoman troops invaded Europe in 1345, sweeping through the Balkans, and though defeated by Timur in 1402, by 1453 the Ottomans under Mehmed II, the Conqueror, had destroyed the Byzantine Empire, captured its capital, Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul, Turkey, which henceforth has served as the Ottoman capital. Under Selim I, from 1512 to 20, and his son Suleiman I, the Magnificent, from 1520 to 66, Ottoman Empire reached its greatest peak. Suleiman took control of parts of Persia, most of Arabia, large sections of Hungary and the Balkans. And by the early 16th century, the Ottomans had also defeated the Mamluk dynasty in Syria and Egypt. And their navy under Barbarossa soon seized control of much of what is called the Barbary Coast. Now, Barbary Coast, does that strike anything with you? Because Thomas Jefferson, our second president, had founded the Marines and shot them over to Libya. The Barbary pirates were Muslim pirates. And this was our first encounter with Islam in the early 1800s. Now, corruption and decadence gradually undermined the government. In the late 17th and 18th century, the Russo-Turkish Wars and wars with Austria, Poland further weakened the empire, which in the 19th century became to be known as the sick man of Europe. And most of its remaining European territory was lost in the Balkan Wars. And the Balkan Wars, remember, that's Hungary, all of those nations that are just north of Turkey that were involved in World War I. Now, before the Ottoman Empire, Islam was for a while a ragged band of tribes seeking to conquer various areas. And at the death of Muhammad, around 632 AD, the caliphate began, and so did Muslim conquest. Now, this is around 632 AD. The caliphate began, and so did Muslim conquest. And by the middle of the 8th century, Islam ruled from Spain across North Africa, including Libya and Egypt, Arabia, what we now know as Israel, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. And in 732, Charles Martel, called the Hammer, at the Battle of Tours, drove them out from France and Spain and back to North Africa. Now, later, the Caliphate became the Ottoman Empire, which existed until 1922, because the Ottoman Empire aligned itself with Germany. Now, back to Revelation 17. The head wound of the beast. I'm going to read some of this again. Here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. They are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for an hour. I am more and more convinced that the head wound is the supposed death of the Ottoman Empire, the last caliphate. If you have been listening to the news over the past 6-7 years regarding the Middle East, there has been a group called ISIS seeking to reestablish the caliphate. And I think people need to watch Turkey. Turkey used to be the most Western nation of the Islamic countries. Now, before I go any further, I want to come back. The beast which was and himself, or no, let me go. There are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. When he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself an 8th, and is one of the 7, which goes to destruction. The beast, ladies and gentlemen, is a world empire. The world empires that we have seen, starting with Egypt, number 1. Number 2 is the Assyrian Empire. Number 3, the Babylonian Empire. After Babylon came Greece, number 4. Number 5 is Rome. I'm sorry, I messed that up. Egypt is the first, Assyrian is second, the 3rd is Babylon, 4th is Medo-Persia, the 5th is Greece. Now it says 5 have fallen. Those 5 fell. 1 is, At the time of the writing, Rome was the empire of the world. And it says, one has not yet come. When he comes, he must remain a little while. I think that one is the Ottoman Empire. And it says, the beast which was and is not is himself an eighth and is one of the seven. He goes to destruction. I think the head wound is that the supposed, or what we see as the death of the Ottoman Empire, but I think it's coming back. Now I just made a statement that I think you need to watch Turkey. Turkey is the center of the Ottoman Empire. Istanbul used to be Constantinople. Istanbul is the heart of the Ottoman Empire. And the current president of Turkey is a man named Erdogan. And I looked up an article titled 10 Disturbing Facts About President Erdogan of Turkey. And I'm only going to give you the 5-1. 5, he could potentially gain access to nuclear weapons. 4, he has brutally cracked down on Kurdish people living in Turkey. 3, a delusional Erdogan has threatened the U.S. while comparing himself to the Ottomans. 2, President Erdogan has been cracking down on free speech, protests, and the media. And 1, he may be on course to remain president and dictator for life. Now, I'm not saying he's the beast, but I'm saying he is a precursor, that kind of individual, because Turkey used to be the most Western nation of all the Islamic nations. We had great relationship with Turkey until Erdogan got into power, and he has been rolling back the laws and reestablishing a stricter Muslim teaching mentality. And with the and when you kind of put that in the same bowl as, you know, a group of individuals wanting to reestablish a caliphate, that's something to think about. So the beast is an empire. The Antichrist is the leader of the empire. Satan gives his power and authority to this individual, and people are amazed and follow the beast and worship the dragon, Satan, and the beast, the Antichrist. This beast is arrogant and blasphemes God, God's tabernacle, meaning those who dwell in heaven, and he does this for 42 months or 3.5 years. And God allows him to wage war against those who have received Christ during the tribulation. The world worships both the dragon and the beast. Revelation 13:8 specifically states that everyone whose name has not been found written in the book of life of the Lamb is going to worship the dragon and the beast. And verse 10 is not overly comforting, Revelation 13. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone is killed with the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and faith of the saints, that those individuals must take their stand and refuse to worship, bow down in any way to the dragon and the beast, and they're going to be killed for doing so. Then the last personage that we talk about is the false prophet. This beast has 2 horns like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. The individual will be a religious leader who supports the beast and is responsible for making the people of the earth worship the beast. Now, Islam is looking for the 12th imam, and that individual is to rise up from a specific well. And this false prophet makes an image of the beast and calls on everyone to worship. And the false prophet is responsible for creating the mark of the beast that no one could be able to buy or sell without it. I managed to get through this and not be too late. I'm surprised. We do not know what that mark actually is. But what we do know is it is a pledge and allegiance and worship towards the beast and the dragon. And the Bible has specifically stated that those who take that mark, there is no going back. There is no repentance from it. Because what they are basically saying is that we believe Satan is God. And there is no going back from that. I enjoyed this tonight. I know it's a whole lot. I hope you can go back and listen to it maybe one or two other times and just kind of soak some of this stuff in, because it is a lot, no doubt about it. But I do believe that the beast and the false prophet are going to come from Islam. And why I believe that is that there has been this war going on between Israel and their half brothers, Ishmael, and in a sense, a half brother. I mean, he's a full brother, Jacob and Esau. But, Jacob and Esau parted ways. Now, they themselves came back together, but their families really never did. And Esau has basically joined with Ishmael. And they've joined them against their brother Jacob. Because through Jacob is the child of the promise. The child of the promise does not come through Ishmael or Esau. It comes through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and through Judah. And Satan is going to do everything he can to mimic and try to say that he has his own line, so to speak. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the week. The Lord bless and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. Be gracious unto you and give you peace. And God willing, we'll see you next week. Good night.